Total spending on healthcare in a certain region rose from $919 million in 1976 to $945 billion in 2005. Compare this rise in healthcare spending to the overall rate of inflation as measured by the Consumer Price Index. Then we have this icon that you're going to click, and that will bring up this table right over here. And the first question is, healthcare spending increased by what percent? Now there's two parts to this problem. We're going to go ahead and look at the fact that we are going to look at overall, or we're going to look at the rise in healthcare spending, and then we're going to look at the overall rate of inflation. So that means that we're looking at comparing an original value to the absolute change. Okay, and when we do that, we're going to have this particular formula. We're looking at relative change and that's going to be equal to absolute change divided by your reference number. What does absolute change mean? Well, what that means is that's the difference between the new value and the reference value. So when we talk about absolute change right here, we're looking at this being the difference between whatever the new value is that we talk about minus the reference value. So new value minus the reference value. Now the reference value is going to be the old or the original value, and the new value is what's being given to us in the problem. So let's go ahead and understand what the healthcare spending would increase by as far as a percentage value. Well, we're looking at relative change, and that will be equal to the spending in 2004 minus the spending in 1976, and we're going to divide that by the spending in 1976. The spending in 2004 is our new value, and the spending in 1976 is the reference value. So what is the spending in 2004? Well, in the problem, we had $945 billion in 2005, and we were given a figure of $919 million in 1976. So we'll go ahead and use that information to establish our relative change, and that's going to be equal to the spending in 2004. I said 2004, and that should actually be 2005, and I do apologize for that. So let's go ahead and fix that right here. That should be a 5, not a 4. So the spending in 2005, which is $945 billion. Now I can do this as a large number, or I can use scientific notation, whichever I want to use. We'll go ahead and use scientific notation, and we'll know that 945 billion is going to be, for this problem, we're simply going to write out the numbers. So the first number is going to be 945 billion. That's the spending in 2005. That would be this one right here. So we'll write that out. And we're going to subtract from that the spending in 1976. And we will use this color, which is going to be 919 million. That's this, and we write that out as a number. And we're going to divide that by the original number, which is the spending in 1976. That is our reference number, so we have 919 million. And then you can simply type that into your calculator to get an answer. And I've brought up web 2.0 calc.com, and we'll just type this in, 945 billion. And you'll notice right up here that it gives you the breakdown, so you know that you have typed in the exact amount. We're going to subtract from that 919 million, and you'll see that I have this answer. I'll press equals, and then I'm going to divide that by the 919 million. Press equals again, and I'm going to get this value right here of 1027. Now this number is not a percent yet, so we're going to write down 1027.29. We'll round to two places. Now to convert this to a percent, I take the 1027.29 and I multiply that by 100%, and that gives me 102,729%. So that is the percentage increase by for healthcare spending. So we would write 102,729%. And then we're going to go to the next part because we need to compare the overall rate of inflation. So for this one, where we want to find the overall rate of inflation, we're looking at relative change, once again, as we did in the original, or in the first part of the problem. But this relative change is going to be given as the CPI from the year that we were looking at, 2005. This is our new value. And we're going to subtract the CPI, remember that's Consumer Price Index, from the year, the original year, which in this case is 1976. And we will divide that by the CPI for 1976. So now what are the values that we'll be substituting in here? Well, the CPI for 2005, we'll go over to our table and we find that it is 195.3. And then we're going to subtract from that the CPI for 1976, so we need to find that value. So once again, that's this value right here. So we look in our table for 1976, and we find that the CPI is 56.9, and we'll write that there. And then we're going to divide once again by the CPI from 1976, which is, as I stated previously, 56.9. And then we'll type that, or we'll put that right here, and we're going to type this into our calculator. Alright, so plug this into your calculator, and once again you can use Web 2.0 Calc if you want to. And we'll go ahead and we will clear the value here. And we'll type in 190, we'll open a set of parentheses, type in 195.3. We will subtract 56.9, close parentheses. We will divide by 56.9, press enter or equals, and that gives us 2.43, which we will round. So that's 2.43. Now that's not the percentage. In order to find the percentage, we will go ahead and take the 2.43 and we will multiply that by 100%, and we'll get the fact that inflation was 243%. And we'll go ahead and write that up here as 243%. Okay?